Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Focus on South Texas. I am Cynthia Lee, and this morning we are talking to a young woman from New Braunfels whose husband about 2 years ago went through a terrible accident, and in the process she found out that there just wasn't a lot of support or at least information about having to become a caregiver. And so Casey Backus decided that she was going to write a book just to talk about all of her experiences and hopefully help others in the process. And so Casey's here to talk about, let's just first start off with what exactly happened to your husband.
Well, we were at my parents' house sitting for them, and we're hanging out, barbecuing with some friends, and my husband decided to get on the four-wheelers and go for one last ride before they put him up. And when he did, he was getting ready to go around a curve and looked behind him to make sure his friend was still there. Just lost control, flew off of it and hit a tree, and he was knocked unconscious right away.
When he hit the tree, did his head hit the tree? Like what happened?
Yes, his head hit the tree. That was really the only injury that he had, was the brain injury. He had some minor scratches and bruises, but the main injury that he had was the brain injury.
So he was not wearing a helmet?
Correct.
Okay. And how old was he at the time?
He was 32.
Okay. And did you see it all go down? Did you see it happen?
No, we were still at the house. They said they were going to put him up, and so the guys just went out on their own.
So I guess the friend is the one who came running back to get everybody. So walk us through that.
Right. Well, I was hanging out with my girlfriends, and we were talking and thought the guys had, they've been gone a while. So we decided to go look for them, and when we did, we saw headlights coming down the driveway, but there was only one. And so I was joking with them saying, oh, that's what took so long, the battery must have died, something. And then at that point, I saw his friend carrying him. He was laid across his lap, unconscious, carrying him back on the four-wheeler.
I can only imagine that's probably an image that you'll never forget.
Yes.
So what went through your mind at that point?
Honestly, the first thought was, this can't be happening. We don't have insurance. And so it was more of just kind of a shock of not really believing. My friends were saying we need to call 911. I'm like, oh, no, it's fine. We'll just drive him to the hospital. And they're all just looking at me like I'm crazy. So we finally made that 911 call. And when they started asking me the questions of, is he breathing? Is he conscious? It started to really sink in.
Wow. I mean, I know he was unconscious, but he was at least breathing?
He was breathing, but he was not conscious.
Okay, so you get to the hospital, and what happened next?
It was just a lot of waiting and waiting and more waiting. They rushed him in to do all kinds of different MRIs and CAT scans and all kinds of tests. We sat there for hours without any answers. They finally let me in to see him at one point, and it was not really what you're expecting, to go in and see your husband unconscious, bloody, with tubes everywhere. And they just let me see him for a second, and then he started not responding again. So they had to rush him out to do more tests, and then again, just waiting hours. And it happened probably about 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. So none of my family was there yet. It was just the friends that were with me. And we spent, all night trying to get a hold of people and get them up to the hospital.
So ultimately, what did doctors say happened, and what was wrong with him?
He had a traumatic brain injury. It's called a diffuse axonal injury. And basically, when he hit, his brain hit the front of his skull and then bounced back. So every part of his brain was affected. It wasn't just like that frontal lobe injury. It was every part. And so they told me that the outlook was really bleak. If he woke up, they didn't know what kind of life he was going to lead, but never to be able to expect anything normal. He was never going to be able to work. He was never going to be able to drive. He would need 24-hour care for the rest of his life. But that they really couldn't tell me much more than that.
So did they have to put him into a coma?
They put him in a drug-induced coma. I mean, he was unconscious, but they did put him in a drug-induced coma. So I don't know exactly what all went on medically, but he was unconscious for 8 days. And they would try, they'd lessen his medication to try and let him wake up, and it didn't work. And
so when he woke up after that 8th day, then how long was he in the hospital?
He lived in the hospital for 3 months. And when you say wake up from a coma, it's not like they open their eyes like in the movies and everything's fine. He opened his eyes one time and focused on something, and that was like a big deal. And I would talk, and he was able to look at me and respond, and then he'd go back to sleep for hours. And then the next day, maybe he'd open his eyes twice. And so it was a very slow waking up process. But he did live in hospitals for 3 months.
And then when he got out of the hospital at that 3-month mark, where was he at as far as what he could do?
He was still needing a lot of help. He could walk around and he could talk. He did have some language problems, but he was able to do some things on his own. He could dress himself, feed himself, but he still needed a lot of care because he was very disoriented. He had some aggression issues, anger problems, and memory problems was a big deal. He would get lost just in the house. So he would, go out the front door thinking he's trying to go into a bedroom, things like that.
Now, I will at least give you a spoiler alert here. I mean, this does have a happy ending to it, so I don't want you to get too discouraged at this point. But, Casey, I know that because I've been through something similar in my own family, so I completely understand that when the patient goes through their own stages of emotions and dealing with the injury, but you had to have just been beside yourself. I mean, you were still practically a newlywed. You were in discussions about, having a baby. You were getting ready to move to that next stage of your life, and suddenly you took about 5 steps back. And so when you got him home, that is probably what motivated you to write the book, because you just didn't know how to deal with everything.
Right. Well, I mean, at this point in our lives, we were young. I was 26, he was 32. We were just starting our lives together. And so I had all of these plans of, work for a few years and then stay home, settle down, have a family, be a stay-at-home mom, all these plans that a young woman dreams of. And when this happened, and they told me he's never going to be normal, he's never going to work, all those plans just kind of go out the window. And so it was a huge adjustment period of just trying to figure out each day, what are we going to do today? How are we going to get through just today?
And were you also having to work at the same time?
I was able to quit my job.
Okay.
We did a benefit to help us raise some money. And we had family helping us just pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
We had some savings. And
so you had said that you had done some research online. I mean, it was very difficult for you to find any kind of information on how you would survive your husband's brain injury.
Right, and I tried to get in touch with some people, or friends would tell me, oh, you should call this person, but everybody that I was talking to was a mother, which, not to diminish anything that they go through, but being a mother and being a spouse are two very different things when you're talking about becoming a caregiver. Because as a spouse, I expected that he was going to be my helper. We were going to go through life together. I wasn't supposed to have to raise him and teach him how to eat and, completely take care of him.
So if you had to give maybe your top 2 or 3 tips of how to be that caregiver, or what you learned that you think is really important, what would they be?
I would say lean on your family. Ask for help and take it. Don't let your pride get in the way, because it's a long journey and you can't do it completely on your own. So definitely ask for help. Find a support group of people that are going through the same problems, because a lot of times you feel like such a horrible person. How could I be thinking certain things, or how could I not have the patience that I need to? But then when you talk to other people that are going through the same thing, you realize this is a normal thing. This is okay to feel.
And how is Jeff doing today? It's been 2 years.
Mm-hmm. He is amazing. I say he's a miracle. He is able to work now. He's able to drive. He's able to be on his own. Everything that the doctors said he'd never be able to do, he's able to do those things now.
So it sounds like perhaps the third lesson is to have hope.
Yes, definitely.
So Casey's book is called How I Survived My Husband's Brain Injury. Perhaps the easiest way to find her book is just to go to her website, howisurvivedmyhusbandsbraininjury.com, and you can find some links on where to pick up a copy of this. And I think that even if you are not dealing with somebody who has a brain injury, it can be any kind of an injury. Just the point is that you are the caregiver. Okay. And I know just from personal experience, I do completely agree with you that a lot of it is just dealing with your own emotions and knowing that it is okay to feel what you feel, and it is okay to reach out and to get that support. So thank you so much for having the courage to be on the show this morning. We really appreciate it. And we're so glad to hear that your husband is doing okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Stay with us. We have more Focus on South Texas just after the break.